Imagine you meet some dude you think is really hot and you're dying to get this guy to your place.
I'm Justin.
Then it works out he's into some BDSM shit that is totally not your game, but you still want to bang the guy, so that in order to sleep with him, the only way is to take a whiplash.
No.
Now imagine yourself reaching about 15 or 20 orgasms and getting whiplashed every time round, and you'll get a sense of what reading Emily Berry's Dear Boy is like. And also 50 Shades of Grey, which I suppose is the most insulting accusation I've ever made in a review, short of the time I compared one of Luke Kenner's critical statements to a jar of Marmite. I say all this for a reason. In any given poetry collection, there are bound to be weaker and stronger poems, but in Dear Boy, the chasm between the better and the worse poems is so massive that even Batman wouldn't go bat paragliding over it. Starting from the assumption that Dear Boy is about questions of gender and gender roles from a female perspective, an assumption which I feel the title justifies in the same way that Great Expectations justifies having great expectations, even though the final chapter turns out to be a fly-ridden crock of shit. I'm sorry, I have been wanting to say that for 24 years now. I am glad I got it out of my system. Starting from the assumption that Dear Boy is about questions of gender and gender roles from a female perspective, the stronger poems treating the subject are like Tarzan played by Johnny Weissmuller, while the weaker poems are... No, they're not even fucking Cheetah. They're more like the annoying elephant shrimp in the Disney Tarzan. The Arlene poems, for instance, are fucking fantastic. They're about this woman called Arlene who brings up a little girl in the house. Arlene is a demonic and incredibly fascinating figure, and the poems spill over with symbolic richness. What makes them work so well is Berry's ability to blend together symbolic opposites. Arlene is described as the devil and God, as mother and baby. The house they live in is a metaphorical past that is simultaneously primordial and constructed, savage and civilized. The poem's speaker questions her role as a girl/woman in the same way that the reader questions whether Arlene's house is a construct imposed from without, or something that is actually inherent to the speaker's psyche. Indeed, Berry is at her very best when she can bring together apparent opposites in such a way that we question their relationship. For instance, in David, she has a little girl saying David's ballsack looks like an upside-down heart, which is an acknowledgement of the ways that the crudest and most physical parts of our nature are connected to our loftiest and most abstract. But right after the Arlene poems, you get the Doctor poems, which are about this doctor figure that feels vaguely lifted from Sylvia Plath's Lady Lazarus, and if you're expecting me to explain them to you, don't hold your breath. I have less of a clue as to who or what the Doctor is supposed to be than I knew what Hakuna Matata meant the first time I heard it in The Lion King at the age of 9.
What the fuck does that mean?
I mean, the first Doctor poem is pretty obviously about rape, in a way that is meant to be shocking and ends up being kind of like this scene, which is supposed to be really dark and scary and ends up being kinky and actually kind of funny. You think I'm exaggerating? Listen to this stanza. The Dr. Bison leaves a mark like the fossil of a sprung jaw. He slapped my face with his penis. I'm sorry, I tried saying that with a straight face, I just couldn't. The thing is that the Doctor figure is characterized so vaguely that the association in this poem doesn't make any sense at all. Doctors are kind of like rapists. Wait, what? Really? Why? How? Berry has a strong control of language and an excellent turn of phrase, but I feel one thing where she comes severely lacking is originality. None of her poems really surprised me except when they were so trite that it was actually surprising. A Short Guide to Corseting uses the idea of a corset as a metaphor for repressed female identity. Well, shit! What kind of a radical, innovative luminary could have ever come up with that idea before?
I'm told it's the latest fashion in London.
Well, women in London must have learnt not to breathe.
You're not to see that boy again. Do you understand me?
That's it! You're going to kill me!
I doubt any woman has ever been killed by a corset alone.
Oh, acid does wonders for your figure. I feel like the ossified woman in the sideshow. You look grand.
Another poem I didn't like was Lovebird, which is about a girl in some relationship that doesn't work out, and it ends with the phrase, "Lover, love was no bird." There is a sense that the speaker is either angry at the man for being an asshole, or at herself for letting that asshole seduce her. The problem is that Berry is throwing back to a very conservative and repressive use of the word love. She is characterizing some male figure as a stud muffin or some other bad thing, and then accusing him of not being true love. And while this argument may sound appealing when it's being made by a feminist, it's probably worth remembering that it's the same argument used by conservative Christians to bash casual sex.
We're going to be talking about the relationship
of faith with love, and then the counterfeit of love called lust.
It is not true love, so it's bad. Berry makes the argument in a more sophisticated manner, granted, but it's still the same fucking argument. And it sounds really odd in this collection because it flat out contradicts the point of her other, better poems, i.e. that things like stud muffins and true love are in fact interdependent categories, not mutually exclusive ones. Dave Coates completely demolished the book in his review, claiming basically that Emily Berry doesn't say anything. I would disagree with this and suggest that Berry in fact has plenty of things to say, but she can't really make up her mind as to which one of these things she wants to commit to. The result is a book in which the good and the bad points are scattered randomly over the same places, and it becomes really hard to take anything home. I mentioned Dave Coates because the acrimony he showed in his review is evidence of an interesting fact. Emily Berry is a Polaroid figure. No shit, what the fuck have I... Emily Berry is a polarizing figure. If you speak to a certain kind of person, Emily Berry is a dazzling debut who brings a new voice into English contemporary poetry, capable of stringing high notes of lyricism and snowboarding in an avalanche. If you speak to another kind of person, Emily Berry is the Poppy of Faber's reactionary eye and about as propped up as the asshole king in Braveheart that nobody gives a fuck about. I find this polarization interesting because it reflects the way that Dear Boys itself divided into drastically good and drastically bad poems. I'm personally going to stay out of it because me joining this type of discussion would end up like a redneck stepping over a corral to fist fight a reindeer. I think Dear Boy has some moments, but it suffers in as much as the poet doesn't seem to know what point she is trying to make. There are some very strong poems, but they are undermined by some very weak ones. As importantly, I feel that Berry really needs to find either a subject matter or a voice that is more uniquely hers, because there is far too much in this debut that I have already seen before. And this is true regardless of whether she is publishing with Faber or with one of the smaller presses that seem to be so jealous of her. Verdict: 6 out of 10. Make of that what you will.